Hello, this is Julius from Basic Financials. Today I'm going to do a video about benefits in kind, or employment benefits. The other name that you might have heard for this is forms P11D. Now, what these are is when you're employed by a business, then sometimes it's quite common for those businesses to give you sort of little benefits. For example, they might have some sort of health insurance scheme, whether that be private medical health, or it could be dentist, something like that. So they may well put you on the scheme if you've been with the company for business for a while. That is what a benefit in kind is. So in other words, the employer is paying for something that gives you a benefit that you're getting because you're employed with them. Now, that's very good of them. It's great, but there is a tax consequence for you. There's also a national insurance consequence for them. They pay 13.8% national insurance on the value of the benefit, but that's not your issue. This video is about the employee's point of view. So from your point of view, if you receive, let's say you're in their medical benefit scheme, so they're paying for your medical benefit, then at the end of the year, tax year, the 5th of April, they will have to do a form P11D, which they send to HMRC. Sometimes that's not the case, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So they'll send that to HMRC, and they will also give you a copy of it. They need to do that by the 19th of July. So if you haven't had one by then, and you think you have got a benefit, give them a shout. So that form will show, it's called a form P11D, and it will show the benefits in kind that the employer has provided to you. So let's say that they've provided benefits of £1,000 worth. Now that you're unfortunately you're taxed on that. So if you're a 20% taxpayer, that £1,000 benefit would cost you £200. Obviously, you haven't had to pay the £5,000, so that's good. But it will cost you £200. If you're a 40% taxpayer, it would cost you £400, and if you're a 45%, it costs you £450. So there is a tax consequence. Now, what would normally happen is that once HMRC receive that form from the company or the business, then HMRC would adjust your PAYE tax code to include that benefit. Now, if this is the first year, you'll have an underpayment from previous years because you wouldn't have paid that tax in the previous year. So that will be collected by an adjustment called, it'll be an underpayment from previous years, and your code will be adjusted to try and collect that tax. But also within your code, they will take, in this example, if it's £1,000 benefit in kind, they will take £1,000 off your personal allowance. So for the year ended 5th of April 21, for example, if your personal allowance was £12,500, which it was, and you didn't have anything else on your tax code to adjust this benefit in kind of £1,000, they would take £1,000 off your £12,500 allowance to give you £11,500, which would make your tax code 1150L instead of 1250L. So it means that you would only get 11,500 tax free. So you would pay the tax due within your PAYE bill. Now, obviously, it's never going to be exactly right unless the price stays the same every year, which is unlikely with something like medical benefit. So HMRC will receive that information from the company or business each year, so they will just make an adjustment to the fact that the amounts change each year, and you'll have a slight underpayment or maybe a slight overpayment if something's changed. So so that's how that works. There are obviously other types of benefit in kind as well. For example, you might have a car. I mean, that's probably the most common one, company car, and sometimes those benefits can be quite big. You might have a value of, say, between £5,000 and £10,000 for your company car, which is quite significant in your tax code, and especially if you've if you haven't had it adjusted in the year and you suddenly find that you've got a whole year's worth plus the next year, it can make quite a big difference to your net pay. Fuel benefit is another thing where if they pay for your private, if a business pays for your private fuel, you might have a beneficial loan. So if you've got a loan from your employer, and you don't pay any interest on that loan, then that's a benefit in kind as well. And the HMRC will charge at their official rate, which I think at the moment it might be 2.25%. It varies and they change it each year according to what the interest rates are doing. But so for example, if you've got a £10,000 loan from your employer, then the interest on that, the benefit would be at 2.5%, would be £250. So you'd be taxed on £250 in the same way that you would have done with that medical benefit. So that's what Form P11D is. Now, sometimes there is another way that was brought in a few years back where the employer may deal with the benefits in kind that you have through your payroll. So they actually deal with it rather than HMRC adjusting your tax code. So you might find an adjustment in your payslip to show the value of the benefit in kind going on top of your gross pay. So you're not actually receiving that money, but they're adjusting for it so you pay the correct amount of tax. That's called payrolling benefits in kind, in which case you won't see an adjustment in your tax code. Now, I would suggest that if you do have adjustments in your tax code that you check them, because they're not always correct. They normally are, but not always, and you want to know what's happening in there really. I've got another video on tax codes, on PAYE codes, which explains some of the adjustments you might get in there. It's always worth checking it, just for peace of mind really. I think that's probably everything to say. Well, there's an awful lot more I could say, but I think that's probably enough for this video. So if you've got any comments or questions, please leave them in the space below as usual. And if you could like and subscribe as usual, if you do that, then you'll see any new videos that pop up. And yeah, thanks for listening. See you again for another video soon.